Platforming games have been around for ages, and the Nintendo Switch is no slouch when it comes to this genre. This was one of the toughest lists that I had to do because there's so many incredible platforming games that mix in cool action and adventure. It was really difficult to put together 25 games and the listing or order of those games, but I think I have 25 of the best Nintendo Switch platformers, action platformers. A lot of these games mix the genres together, and I wanted to get you guys the absolute best on the Nintendo Switch, especially with so many games going on discount and people looking for new things to play on the system. But before we get into all of that, what's good everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get the best Nintendo Switch news, content, videos, live streams, JRPG content, and so much more. Now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into number 25. And I have Disney's Illusion Island. Now, this one might be a little bit of a shock to people, but this is an underrated game. It's a really cool family-style co-op platformer that reminds me of the new Super Mario Bros. Series or any of the ones where you have these 4 characters on screen. You got some cool powers between the different characters. You've got some really good graphics. The game runs perfect on the Nintendo Switch. The levels are very fun and varied. And if you have family members, like let's say younger sibling or kids that you want to play a co-op platformer with, this is a really good option. Now, it doesn't offer as much as some of the other platformers on this list, which is why it slid down to number 25. But you can't really go wrong if you're looking for a smooth co-op platformer with varied levels, great music, great art design. Everything was really good in this game. So Disney Illusion Island makes it to number 25 on the list. Number 24. Mega Man 11. Now, we all kind of make jokes about Mega Man 11 saying, oh, it's not up to where it was or where it could be, but that doesn't mean it's not an incredible action platformer. All of the great things that you love about Mega Man is here. You've got a bunch of cool robot masters. You have a lot of different powers to get. You got a lot of different levels to go through. There was a lot of cool things about Mega Man 11. It just fell short in some of the other areas, but overall, I had a blast blasting through with the Blue Bomber and just really harkening back to the old school days of Mega Man when I first started playing in the NES era. I love the different time trials and extra content that you can unlock once you've beaten the game, and speedrunning the game actually becomes pretty fun once you get good at it. There's some great controls, some stuff in there for newbies being able to rewind the different time and things. So I think that Mega Man 11 is a great entry point for people trying to get into the Mega Man series, and even for seasoned veterans of the series, it's still fun to go back and play. I challenge all of you guys that kind of had some issues with Mega Man 11, go back, check it out, and play through and see what you think now at this point, giving it a little bit of time. I think you're going to find that Mega Man 11 is a solid action platformer and absolutely deserving of one of the best Nintendo Switch platforming games. Number 23, Super Mario Maker 2. Now, Super Mario Maker 2 is not my favorite 2D platformer. Obviously, it's all the way down here at number 23, and I know some of you guys have it a lot higher, but the reason why it's not higher for me is just because I'm not as into the building phase and all that different type of stuff. Now, this game could easily be so much higher on so many people's lists, and I completely get that, but what it does offer is a suite of tools for you to build what you want and play through levels. You have online multiplayer. You've got a bunch of different styles throughout Nintendo's history with Mario. You've got a lot of different options in terms of controlling slopes and making different types of levels. Heck, you've got some people that even go crazy with it, making whole worlds for you to enjoy and play. So Super Mario Maker 2 might not be my favorite, but it is still one of the best 2D platformers no matter what number you want to put it at. It offers so much to gamers out there, and I think that it's going to have its own little cult legacy of people that still 5-10 years from now still go back to Super Mario Maker 2. Heck, still go back to Super Mario Maker on the Wii U and use the gamepad in order to play these games, share levels, have fun when it comes to just playing a Mario old school experience. So that's exactly why I have Super Mario Maker 2 at number 23 on the list. But I will say this before I get to the next one. I did like the single player stuff. I think that the levels built from Nintendo themselves, the single player stuff, was really cool in the game, and the whole building aspect and going through with Mario, I thought that was fun. Next up at number 22, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. And I know some people thinking, wait a minute, Mario Maker, why isn't that over it? Well, I kind of like simple when it comes to platformers, right? Like, I think platformers in Mario, simpler is better, but I think that New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe packs in so much content that I don't have to worry about going through codes and levels and worrying about all these different types of crazy design, whereas it's really just a focused platforming Mario experience. Now, it's not the best one, but it's still really good, and I think that the challenge levels, and I think that some of the stuff that this game offers is, I would say, overlooked by people, just considering the staleness of the graphics and the music. But if you look at the challenge levels, if you look at the Super Luigi U content, there is a lot in this package here to like. It looks clean, it runs great. I think there are some great music tracks in there, a lot of not, but there are some good music there. And overall, when you play New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe co-op with your friends or with your family, you get a sense of, okay, this is actually an enjoyable experience that ramps up in difficulty as you go along. And of course, the Super Luigi U levels are pretty tough, and the challenges in the game are also tough as well. So that's the reason why New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is at number 22 on my list. 21, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I've been finding a reason to talk about this game again on the channel because so many people overlook how good this game is. If you like Donkey Kong Country, which we will get to in just a bit, then Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is the game for you. I think that this game is so much better than the Yooka-Laylee 3D type of like Banjo-Kazooie game. This one has great levels. So if you want something that has varied levels, has a nice little overworld, colorful graphics, good music, fantastic controls, one of the best things about the game, and really just creative ways to get you engaged and platforming and jumping and swinging and swimming. There's just so much stuff in this game. I was blown away considering the size of the game and the team. I was blown away by what they actually did in game and had so much fun going through and playing it. I think I even beat it twice when it comes down to it. I think I beat it when it first came out, then I know I beat it like a couple years later or something like that, just because I always enjoyed going back to it. And I had a lot of hope for Yooka-Laylee, the original. Didn't quite live up to that, but this game did live up to an incredible classic platformer that you would have played on like the Super Nintendo, or you would have played on any of the past previous systems. So I loved Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, and it's absolutely one of the best Nintendo Switch platformers. Next up at number 20 is Cave Story Plus, and honestly, this could go higher, but the list from this point and up is so fierce. It's so good that it's hard that Cave Story Plus actually made it to this point, but this is one of the originals. This is like the OG. Cave Story is so great in so many different ways when it comes to its action in the game, when it comes to its platforming segments, but it's kind of more tilted on the action side. There is some great platforming in there, but it's kind of more on the action side, but I had to include it in here, and maybe that's the reason why it's dropped down just a little bit compared to some of the other games that kind of have way better platforming parts, to me at least. But you can't really leave Cave Story out of this. You gotta have Cave Story Plus in. The Nintendo Switch version is pretty much the definitive version of the game. So much content, great weapons, so many different things to do in the game and areas to go through. It's a classic, it's an OG, it's fun, it's still really good, it still controls well, the music is still fantastic. Go out there, play Cave Story Plus if you're looking for a great action platformer to kind of get into, and you will not be sorry. Next up at number 19 is Mega Man X Legacy Collection. Now, there are a bunch of these Legacy Collection games, but really all I'm focusing on is Mega Man X, Mega Man X2, and Mega Man X3. Those, to me, are the pinnacle of Mega Man games, and I'll always regard them as my favorites until I play something that I feel is better. Mega Man X Legacy Collection gives all of that access, all these different games right there in the palm of your hand, whether you want to play on the go or whether you want to play on your Nintendo Switch with the TV. It's great to have. You relive the childhood moments or get into it for the first time. Super fast action when it comes to Mega Man, a bunch of different upgrades, a charming but also cold story at the same time. Mega Man X Legacy Collection brings the best of Mega Man at the height of Mega Man's powers, at the height of how cool Mega Man was, and lets you play it get anywhere. So for me, Mega Man X Legacy Collection, with the boss battles, with the levels, with the music, oh goodness gracious, I can go on probably for like 15 minutes about how lit Mega Man music is. And in this Mega Man X Legacy Collection, you get all of that jam-packed in here. I gotta have it at number 19 on this list. It's so good. I might have it on there even if the game was bad for the music alone. But the game is incredible with the different powers and the Mega Buster and playing as Zero and so many different things that you can do in these Mega Man games. The secrets, the levels, it's just awesome. Mega Man is awesome, but Mega Man X Legacy Collection is still the GOAT of Mega Man games to me. Next up at number 18, Celeste, a game that I didn't really latch onto at first. At first it didn't really get me, but as I went back to it, considering how good the game is, I kept on going back to it, kept on playing it, kept on trying it out, and ended up really liking Celeste. It's got a very cold but also intriguing story with what happens in the game. I think that the controls are probably the best thing about it. The addictive nature of just climbing and dashing and going over and over and trying out the best combinations, going for the best times. It becomes a very addicting and also frustrating game to play, but the more you play it, the better you get at it, and the more you start to understand what the developers were trying to do. It almost becomes intrinsic to where you just start moving before you even think with some of the more difficult levels, and you'll be over and over doing it, but at the same time you'll still be learning each time and getting better and better. And I think that's what I loved about Celeste. It was a uniform type of game where the controls and the gameplay and the graphics and everything just kind of meld together, and you get into a rhythm of playing it, and it becomes incredibly fun. One of the big reasons why it was nominated for Game of the year that it came out. So it is that good. It's just something that for me, not quite as good maybe as they were talking about, but it's still easily one of the best games on the Nintendo Switch, one of the best platformers on the system, and I can easily recommend it as one of the top 25 best Nintendo Switch platformers. Coming in at number 17 is Dead Cells, and this game has a lot of action, but the platforming in there is not that bad. I think that it does some pretty cool and unique things. It's procedurally generated, right? So there's always going to be random different things that happen in different room layouts, but I think it's still fun. I think that the spikes and the dodging and the danger, everything that you go through with this game is awesome. And if you throw in the Castlevania stuff that came out not too long ago, but if you throw in that, it really becomes a very stacked type of game. Now, rogue games aren't my favorite, which is the reason why it's a little bit lower on my list, and just because the action is kind of a bit more prevalent than the platforming, but they're both still really good and mend well together. You've got to be good at both in this game. You just can't be a master of the combat and be trash at the platforming, or you're probably going to die. Or you can't be bad at the combat and terrible at jumping around and platforming, or you're probably going to die and have to start over again. And that's what I love about Dead Cells. It gives you that feeling that really you've got to master both. You got to have a grip on the combat and the platforming in order to get through all the levels, get through them efficiently and fast, and really get the best weapons in order to do the best on your run, especially with the Castlevania stuff, which is just super cool to go through those different levels and the different weapons that you get. But Dead Cells is one of those games that's always going to be a timeless classic because of just how it plays. It's super smooth, it's super fun, and it goes back to the fundamentals of what we all played back in the day when it comes to Mario and platforming and jumping around and action games like Castlevania or other titles that came out at that time. It just does it in a newer sense with a different type of package around it, with it being a rogue game. So Dead Cells, still one of the best on the Nintendo Switch. Doesn't matter what you classify it as, but it makes it to number 17 on my list. Number 16, The Messenger. And The Messenger is here because I actually really enjoyed the platforming and jumping and controls of The Messenger. It was a lot of fun. Cool action, you switch between the two different styles, different characters and eras, but I think that it created a really dope dynamic to where it feels different to play through on each one. And I loved how the level design was. I mean, this game has some crazy stuff happening in it, and I loved it because it's like the old school Ninja Gaiden, but they make it actually fair and a bit more fun. Old school Ninja Gaiden is just frustrating to where you want to tear your hair out, and this game you only want to tear your hair out sometimes, but for the most part you're good. You're going to get through it, you're going to have some fun, you're going to really really enjoy the different levels and the platforming and the character and the story. This stuff is really, really well done. I love the team. Sabotage Studio, you guys know them maybe recently from Sea of Stars. They did this game as well with The Messenger. So I loved it so much. I thought it was an incredible experience. I had a ton of fun platforming and jumping and running and slashing. To me, it's the perfect blend of what an old school themed action platformer should be like. And I'm really happy that I got a chance to check this game out because I almost didn't. I had no idea what the game was about, and I wasn't really feeling it at first. It wasn't until I really just decided to give it a shot then I'm like, oh wow, this game's actually incredible. So The Messenger makes the number 16 on the list. Coming in at number 15, Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. And honestly, this could be so much higher if I didn't already play it a number of times, like on the Wii U and everything, and how old it is. There were a number of factors with this game. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is still incredible. Like, you get all these different DLCs packed in. You get all this different stuff packed in. It is an awesome experience that platforming fans and action platforming fans, you're going to love. I mean, I know I loved it. I loved all the different DLCs where you can play as different characters. That was super dope. And the game itself is just fun. I think that the controls is really what makes it, along with the levels, right? When it comes to platforming, and we've talked about this, obviously it's a platformer, so we've been talking about this, but when you have superior level design with some of these old school games, it creates a different type of experience, like a euphoria, kind of like you're taking back to the day when you were playing on the NES or the Super Nintendo. And this does the same thing. Shovel Knight feels old school, but it has all of the cool modern things that you would see in other types of games mixed in with the old school. So it's a perfect blend and fusion of that. Shovel Knight, one of the first new age indie games that I played, and the Treasure Trove, with all the content that's in there, easily could have been higher as well. But once again, this was one of the fiercest lists that I had to put together. Shovel Knight is just as good as anything out there. It's just something that I've played on the Wii U beforehand and everything, so I'm evaluating all of it. But Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, if you've never played it before and you want to pick up this package on the Switch, you are in for a treat because there is so much game here. You'll be playing for hours on end and have a ton of fun while you're at it. So that's why Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is number 15 on my list. Number 14, Sonic Mania Plus. And some might say this is the best Sonic game of all time. And I wouldn't argue with this being the best Sonic game of all time, or at least right up there in the top 3. Sonic Mania Plus does so many things right and what people loved in the era that I grew up with Sonic, and that is the old school Genesis era, the Attitude era of Sonic and Sega and the Genesis and them taunting Nintendo. Sonic Mania Plus feels like the perfect extension of that era, and I love it. I think that the controls, I think that the levels, the graphics, the music, it all just blends into like the perfect, I would say, smoothie. There you go. The perfect Sonic smoothie in order for players to just enjoy themselves. But I think overall, if you look at the different things that Sonic Mania Plus does, it's a crash course in fast level design. I mean, these games are really difficult to make because how do you make a game that has length and depth, but you're running through the stages as fast as possible, right? You have to create different types of obstacles and different types of things for players to get into that feel fun and refreshing to go by, but also don't bog you down too much. And I think that Sonic Mania Plus, out of all the Sonic games out there, it might do the best job of that in terms of free flowing, in addition to having some exploration and different things for you to do so you don't beat the game in 2 minutes, right? So Sonic Mania Plus is the best when it comes to 2D Sonic. I think it's still the best. It's right up there for me with Sonic and Knuckles when they first introduced Knuckles the character, and I love Knuckles. He's like super cool. So for me, putting Sonic Mania Plus in that category with the old school Sonic like that, I just give it the absolute respect. It is that good. If you haven't played Sonic Mania Plus, go out there, pick it up. It's physical and digital on the Nintendo Switch. There's no reason not to try it out, at least, even if you're not a big Sonic fan. This might make you into a old school 2D Sonic fan because it blends that classic old school with new levels, remixed and reimagined from Sega and an outside team. So I think that Sonic Mania Plus is awesome, and it deserves the number 14 spot on my list. Number 13, Crash 4, It's About Time. Yeah, we got a little bit of a underrated game in my opinion. People talk about Crash Bandicoot 4 and say, well, maybe it's not quite as good as the other Crash Bandicoot games, but I think that Crash Bandicoot 4 is one of the best platformers out there. It's got beautiful graphics first and foremost. The music, sound design is really good on the Nintendo Switch, but the gameplay is fun. They've got a bunch of new ideas and different types of levels and outfits and characters to use. I was kind of blown away by what they did in this game, and I think that it is underrated a bit. I think it could have been rated higher. Maybe you guys don't put it that way, but from what my gameplay of Crash 4 was, I found it to be incredibly innovative and fun within the Crash Bandicoot platformer universe. It had the old school Crash Bandicoot levels where you're running towards the screen and also you're running away from something, the side-scrolling 2D. It's got a ton of content, different types of things to collect, and the difficulty is blistering. Like, it is a hard game, and I like that about my Crash games. I like that about my platformers, to be difficult, just because why else would you want it to be super easy? Because I think it creates a sense of accomplishment once you beat the game, and Crash does that. Crash gives you that pretty much every time that you get a secret unlockable that was very difficult, or you go through a path that was harder, or optional different things that most people might just skip. Crash 4 gives all of that to you in one game. So for me, Crash 4, It's About Time is absolutely one of the best Nintendo Switch platformers, and that's why it's number 13 on my list. Number 12, Cuphead. Once again, interesting. Action game, a lot of 2D, side-scrolling shooting, but platforming as well. One thing in this game that'll get you, if you don't know how to run and jump and land on different platforms and do different things and dodge obstacles, you are going to get cooked. And that's what Cuphead is all about. It's about getting cooked over and over and over and learning from your mistakes and then going at it again. And I think that Cuphead blends all of the old school stuff that we talked about in terms of what makes a platformer great. And Cuphead really takes all of that and puts it in this incredible aesthetic, that old school cartoons of the 30s. That is super cool. And the story behind Cuphead is just inspirational when it comes to how they got this game funded and what they did and turned it into this huge franchise at this point with like a Netflix show and or movies or other stuff that's happening, toys, all this different type of stuff. So Cuphead to me is one of those games that I'll go back and play pretty much every year or so. I'll go back and play, fire it up. The DLC that came out that took forever, I dabbled in that, and it's also very challenging and good as well. So Cuphead has memorable characters, it's got great graphics, great music, great controls. I mean, it's easily one of the best platformers, and honestly, it could have been way higher, like so many games on this list, but I will say it once, and I think I'll keep saying it. Man, I had a tough time putting this one together because even Cuphead is only at number 12. Number 11, Rayman Legends, one of the best 2D platformers easily of all time. It is a classic. It would have been higher if the Nintendo Switch version was just a little bit better when it comes to some of the different things, but make no mistake about it, guys. Rayman Legends is still one of the best. It's got super fun gameplay, it's got great graphics, it's got fluid animation. Like, you feel like every single frame, every single jump, everything feels great to look at and play. The music isn't necessarily my thing. There's some cool music levels that sound great, but just the normal music isn't my thing. Sound effects are great and the platforming and the levels are great, but if the music was a little bit more to my liking with normal stages, then I probably might have it a bit higher. I think that music is super important, but once again, we're splitting hairs here when it comes to the top 20 plus, because all of these games are just so great. But Rayman Legends to me stuck out because of its visual style, because of its controls, because of its gameplay and its content. I think that Rayman Legends offers a lot more than the games that we talked about before. There is just a suite of different things to do in the game, and that's the reason why Rayman Legends makes the number 11 on the list. All right, guys, we're in the top 10, and let's start off with Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and this game is incredible. It's got a great package when it comes to Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. Galaxy in particular, one of my favorite Wii platformers of all time, one of my favorite platformers of all time. It's right up there. So I had to put Super Mario 3D All-Stars high up on the list. Now, I'm not as high on Mario 64 or Super Mario Sunshine. Those games are very good. I think that Mario 64 was so revolutionary for what it did with its gameplay, but there's definitely a lot of platformers that have eclipsed it at this point, but it's still very playable, very good. Sunshine, I was never the biggest fan of, but it was pretty cool to go back into Sunshine and see how great the game looks. I know it's running like an emulated GameCube graphics, but it looks really good graphically. And of course, Mario Galaxy still looks as incredible as ever. This package is a little bit weird because of how they handled it with some of the different things, but I still enjoyed playing it through. I still had a ton of fun. Super Mario Galaxy in particular, the controls are so good. Still have some of the issues with what they had before, but at least they allow you to play with the Pro Controller, which was a huge benefit to myself because I don't really like shaking the Wii Remote or any of that different type of stuff. So playing with the Pro Controller was great, except for some levels was harder when you do need those pointer controls based on how they did it floating around in space. So there is that, but still overall, Super Mario 3D All-Stars is one of the best packages and becoming even more rare and rare as the time goes on. Next up at number 9, Hollow Knight, and we're still waiting. Once again, we got to mention it, Silksong, right? But regular Hollow Knight is on the Nintendo Switch and one of the best platformers. Once again, one of those games that's a blend between the action and platforming, and it's something that I talk about all the time. It's had multiple different types of ratings and rankings, but Hollow Knight, if you look at the platforming in the game, the pure platforming parts and some of the challenges, it's really good. It's pinpoint, it's tough as nails. You might tear your hair out again when it comes down to it, but overall, like, it's still really fun to go through and play. I enjoyed how they seamlessly kind of blend the platforming parts and kind of getting to certain spots and jumping and running and doing all the stuff that you would expect in a traditional platformer with the action elements as well. It really has a vibe of like Metroid, kind of mixed with Mario and mixed with cool action games. Kind of has like a little bit of everything, not completely in one way or another, but you can tell that they were fans of the old school games that these games were built on, kind of like the frame that these games were built on. Hollow Knight is still one of the most sublime experiences. It really features great content in there, and I think that overall the best thing about this game is that when you're doing these challenges, when you're doing the platforming, it's pinpoint accurate. The controls are right there, so when you do mess up, it's on you more than anything. So Hollow Knight makes the number 9 on the list. Number 8, Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy. One of my favorite games of all time is Crash Bandicoot 2. I remember going back and playing them all the time at my friend Dominic's house back in the day. So when I found out that Crash Bandicoot, the N. Sane Trilogy, was coming to the Nintendo Switch and I can play those anywhere that I want, I thought that it was incredible. These games still hold up. That old school magic, but the way that they did it on the PlayStation is perfectly remastered, remade, and brought to the Nintendo Switch in a package that features 3 incredible games that will test your platforming skill. And I think that that's important. When you're talking about the best platformers, to me, challenge and level design will always be part of that. Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3 might be a little bit unfair at times, but that's part of the experience, and it's still very good even to this day. The design in the game is superb with what you can do with Crash, the jumping, the physics, everything feels pretty good, and at the end of the day, it's fun. It's really fun to tear through and go through the different levels with these new graphics, with the great music that it has, with the controls and how everything just lines up. Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy is just a fantastic package when you put everything together. Very happy about what they've done here. And if you're looking for 3 of the best platformers ever made all in one package, this is it right here, and that's why it's number 8 on my list. Number 7, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Action platformer. This game blends the two seamlessly, but I think that out of all the Kirby games, this one to me feels the best. By far the best 3D Kirby game. 3D Kirby games have not been incredible. Some people like some of the previous ones, but to me, this is the best 3D Kirby game. This is the best Kirby game, period. I think that the controls, even though it's 30 frames per second, which obviously platforming you probably want 60 frames, it felt like a 60 frames per second game. It moved very smoothly. The input delay was so minimal on the Nintendo Switch, and it was just fun. very creative and innovative levels. I love some of the different things they did with like the lights out Kirby stage. I love that part of the game, like where you have to go through in the light and jump. The platforming is fun, but it's also challenging once you get to a certain spot. There are challenges sprinkled throughout the whole levels. You have the overworld map and everything, which is super cool. But then once you beat the game and you kind of go through, there's like a whole other suite of different things to do that will definitely test your skills. Plus there's also platforming challenges and everything right there laid out in the levels. I think that the levels themselves are very creative, colorful, fun, music's great. Everything just lines up. This is the perfect Kirby 3D experience. Now, the game's not perfect overall, but if you're talking about what you want or what you expect from Kirby going forward, it's only to take this base and go even further. But this was a massive jump for the Kirby franchise, and the first time in a while for me that I played a Kirby game and I'm like, wow, I feel fulfilled after playing this Kirby game. The last time was probably like the Kirby games on the Nintendo 3DS, so it had been a while, and this game is better than those when it comes to Planet Robobot and Triple Deluxe. So Kirby and the Forgotten Land makes it to number 7 on my list. Number 6, the Ori Collection, and I'm just putting them together because they do come as a package on the Nintendo Switch, and both of these games, Ori, Will of the Wisp, Ori and the Blind Forest, are fantastic. They have emotional journeys that really take the same base of gameplay. It's a Metroidvania platformer action type of game where you're running through, you have a bunch of different really cool aesthetic looking levels, a lot of darker areas with illumination and cool lighting, and you're going through and doing these platforming challenges, and you're going through and playing through these levels, and what you're feeling while you're playing through is this sense of discovery. And I think with platforming, especially at this level, when we talk about the best platformers, that sense of discovery and seamlessness with the controls adds so much to the experience. It's that good. The Ori games combine that. I think that's what makes a great platformer, is when you have that to where you're not wrangling with the controls or struggling with them, and you can just play seamlessly. And whenever something does happen bad to you, you feel that it's your fault for the most part. That's what platforming is all about. And the Ori collection of the games are just great. When it comes to story and emotional impact, this might be the best game on the list. Platformers aren't known for that. They're known for being more jovial and kind of fun loving, and story isn't a big deal in a lot of them, but this one is. This really is that type of game. I think that Ori probably has the best story out of all the different games that we're talking about here, maybe with the exception of a game or two. So for me, the Ori collection makes it to number 6 on my list. All right, guys, we've made it to the top 5. In at number 5, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and this game is one of the GOATs. Super Mario 3D World blends seamlessly the 2D Mario aspect and the 3D Mario aspect, and makes it to where anyone can play, but also have a very good time with some cool nods or throwbacks to the old school Mario games, and even Super Mario Bros. USA with the different characters that have different abilities. Balanced Mario, Princess Peach can float, Luigi jumps higher, kind of slippery, Toad's faster. I loved all of that. It really wanted to blend what they did before and the new school Marios to bring together the fans of 2D Mario and 3D Mario. And Bowser's Fury just adds a whole nother layer of potentially what the future could be for the Mario series. It's seamless. You get right in and right out. It's got innovative things for the Mario series with like mid-boss battles, Bowser coming out of nowhere, you getting huge as Cat Mario. It's just fun. It's exciting and it's quick. It's over before you know it, but that was the point. It was to be quick and seamless. You get in, have an experience, just a taste of what's to come potentially in the future with Mario. So for me, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, adding in the online multiplayer, isn't necessarily the best, but still okay. Still having that fantastic co-op experience if you want to play with family and friends, or even if you want to play solo and just go through and get to the hard levels and do all of that stuff. Super Mario 3D World pretty much has every type of Mario fan covered, and puts enough content into the Switch release to where I had to have it in my top 5. Number 4, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Old school at this point. We're going on the 10-year anniversary of the game. Where's the next Donkey Kong, Nintendo? I hope it's coming soon. I'm pretty sure it's coming soon, but Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is still one of the GOATs of platforming. hard as nails platformer. You're going to be dying over and over, and Nintendo knew it. That was the way that the game was designed, because that was how the old school Donkey Kong games were. Now, back in the day, I was a huge fan. I'm still at this point, but back in the day, man, Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo was like my favorite thing. It was my jam. I loved it. I even liked it more than Mario at times. So Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze brought back that nostalgia, brought back that emphasis on old school. But it's not just nostalgia with this game, it's actually the game itself. The level design, the controls, the gameplay, the music is just as good, if not better, than what we got. Definitely better when it comes to controls, and when it comes to design, oh my gosh, hit detection and all of that. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze blows away the original trilogy on the Super Nintendo. So Donkey Kong is still one of the best. I love the different Kongs and the powers that they have. And while the funky mode might not necessarily be something that core gamers like ourselves want to get into and play, I think that having that playability for a younger fan or somebody who just sucks at games brings them able to play the masterpiece that we see, and creates a better game overall, as long as it's optional. Because more people playing, more accessibility options is great, and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Switch adds that, but still gives you that old school play anywhere that you want. So to me, that is a win-win. I did like the portable Donkey Kong games in the past, although there were so many limitations. I always loved the Super Nintendo and console experiences more, but now with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, we get the best of both on the Switch, and it's even better when it comes to some of the boss battles and the graphics and the music and everything. Heck, the boss battles are way better than the previous games. So that's why Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is number 4 on my list. Number 3, Metroid Dread. There are so many things that are incredible about Metroid Dread. Sometimes I kind of find it hard. I had to do a couple takes of this. I find it hard to actually talk about it in a way, because I think that it's such a monumental game for myself when it comes to 2D Metroid. Not only because the game is great and obviously Game of the Year nominations and people saying Metroid is back, but it's the significance of the game. Not only did they come back, but they came back with vengeance. Let's talk about how great the levels are in this. Let's talk about how incredible the controls are in this game. Let's talk about the platforming action, the different abilities that Samus gets. It fuses all together to me to create the ultimate 2D Metroid action platforming experience. I like this game more than Super Metroid. I like it more than Metroid Fusion. I like it more than the Metroid original remake. And that is saying a lot, because for years, for decades, Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion were untouchable to me until 2021 and Metroid Dread came out. And I'm like, whoa, this is it. It combines so many of the great elements of the old school games, but way better controls than Super, a longer, more fulfilling experience than Fusion and the Metroid old school remake, and definitely better than Metroid Samus Returns remake. If you look at everything Dread does, it just falls a little short maybe in the music category, but in content, in replay value, in graphics, in gameplay, in controls, it beats the other Metroid games handily. It's not even close if you go back and compare them. Our nostalgia for certain things might blind us at times, but for me, I tried to take those down to rate this list. To do everything on this list, I tried to take those down, and Metroid Dread kept on ranking higher and higher and higher over previous Metroid games and over games on my list here. And not to mention, no spoilers here, but that ending in terms of what you do and how it shakes down is one of the greatest of all time, period. Because that blew me away. I've never been more shocked at the ending of the Metroid game than right here with Metroid Dread. So for me, Metroid Dread makes it to number 3 on the list. Number 2, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, a new school wonder. We're back at it here with this game, talking about it. And while I haven't beaten everything in this game, I still have some special levels and stuff for me to do. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is exactly what I wanted to see from 2D Mario for a while now. And they finally buckled down and brought back what I felt that should be in a Mario game. The weird, the quirky, the awkward, the strange, all the wonder and excitement that I felt in previous Mario games in the 2D era. Super Mario World 2, in addition to Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, those were all crazy types of experiences that really brought you to these different worlds with weird looking characters and strange things going on. And I think that the new Super Mario Bros. Series kind of put an end to that a little bit and made it more old school and flat like the original Mario. And that's fine. I think that it worked out really well. Obviously, Nintendo was happy with the sales, but Wonder is back to that excitement that we got at the very end of the NES era with Super Mario Bros. 3 and in the Super Nintendo era. That weird type of gameplay. Stuff like on Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, touch fuzzy, get dizzy. Weird things like that. Super Mario Bros. Wonder kind of takes that and blows it to a whole new degree with the Wonder Seeds, with the Wonder Flowers, with the level design, with the transformations, with the power-ups, with the badge system, with the controls. Everything just feels great to play, and the level design is superior. 2D platforming, I don't think there's anything better than this. Superior level design at the top and pretty much the best in class when it comes down to it. But you have to have so many things to kind of fit together in order to make this feel great to play. And Super Mario Bros. Wonder pretty much nails every single aspect of it. Not 100% perfect with everything, but when it comes to a platforming experience, 2D platforming experience, it's pretty much a 10 out of 10. There's not really anything to me that really beats it out by a lot in any type of area. So Super Mario Bros. Wonder is a GOAT among 2D platforming games. I think that graphically it's incredible. It looks great, it runs great, it plays great, it's got great content in there, it's got cool overworld design, it's got extra stuff to do, it's got online multiplayer where you can play with your friends, the local co-op. It's the complete package when it comes to a 2D platformer, and that's why it made it all the way up to number 2 on my list. And at number 1, Super Mario Odyssey. Odyssey is the Nintendo Switch. There were 2 games that made the platform, and that was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild at the beginning and Super Mario Odyssey. The 1-2 back-to-back punches at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. Mario Odyssey solidified that the Nintendo Switch was going to be a force. Yes, it was started off with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but Mario capped it off in terms of going into the holiday and bringing about, okay, this is serious, and Super Mario Odyssey is that good. One of the best rated games of all time with a 97, but I don't need to see that in order to see how great it is. From a 3D platforming perspective, I never felt better depth perception. Sometimes there was issues with depth perception in 3D platformers that people have. Super Mario Odyssey fixes that. I don't know how it fixes that, but it fixes that with its levels. I never felt like I was jumping and missing my jumps because there was some problems like with spatial and reading the jumps and everything. Super Mario Odyssey combines some of the best action elements that we've seen from Mario 3D games and puts that into an experience that's just incredibly fun. It's got great graphics. The performance is fantastic. It looks really good. Still one of the best looking games on the Nintendo Switch, and the level design and the amount of levels that are in this is just superb. There is content on top of content. You can spend so many hours playing through this game, but I just had tons of fun, and I think at the end of the day, platformers are supposed to be the purest form of fun. That's why stories are kind of light and there's not necessarily a bunch of stuff extra that's going on, but the main thing is the controls, the levels, the design, the jumping, and Super Mario Odyssey as a 3D platformer nails every single aspect to this to the T. I couldn't be happier with what Super Mario Odyssey did. The levels, the new donk seating, the different places you can go, the music was just great. So we've talked about the perfect fusion and blend of gameplay and controls. Super Mario Odyssey is that. It's at the top of it when it comes down to it because it's so good. The movement options in the game in terms of the rolling and the cappy and the jumping and the transformations, it's dynamic. And as you start going to different environments and seeing so many different styles and ways that you can tackle levels and play, to me Super Mario Odyssey is still the best on the Nintendo Switch, built for the system when it comes to platformers. But all right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for my list here. What are your top 25 or top platformers on the Nintendo Switch? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other top 25 lists on the Nintendo Switch, like my top 25 best Nintendo Switch games and other top 25 lists. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you for the next one. Peace.